You're grinding every day. Long hours, no backup, no accountability. That ends now. The Empower Solopreneur Mastermind gives you one simple advantage: a weekly power session that turns isolation into domination. Every Friday morning on Zoom, you'll get real coaching and real feedback to make real moves. Join a group of driven professionals in a program designed for solopreneurs and people working at home. Stop getting stuck. Start scaling. Seats are limited. Lock in yours today at modernobserver.com/empower-mastermind.
Hello, and welcome to the Success Showcase, the podcast that helps you succeed in your business, life, and career. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin, with the Modern Observer Group, and with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
I'm doing great, Eric. How are you?
I am cold. And you know what? I am not alone. This is going across the country.
It's amazing. It's a winter wonderland outside here, and it's a funny side. I run a group on Sundays on Zoom, and also live at my church. And one of the people who used to always participates moved down to South Carolina about 3 years ago, and I got a text from her on Saturday saying she's a big UConn women's basketball fan, and they were playing Tennessee in Hartford yesterday. So she was in Philadelphia, waiting for the plane to come up here, saying she wasn't going to make yesterday's session because it's at noon. And she also talked about they got ice down there on top of the snow a week ago with that stuff going on. And I said, well, you're coming to the right place here. The good news is the storm is totally missing us. The bad news is you're going to freeze, but that's just the way it goes up here. And so she missed, whatever happened down there, which obviously wasn't good there. But it's just obviously a week ago, we were looking at another big storm coming up here. And the front went so far south down to Florida and up that everything missed us in Connecticut to the east, which is
It's
crazy.
absolutely crazy. Texas got snow.
Yep.
Miami hit a temperature of 32 degrees. They're not
Yep.
used to that in Miami.
Not at
South
all.
South Carolina and North Carolina got hit with snow and ice.
Yep.
It's just this freak storm. So everybody stay safe, stay warm. And unfortunately, we're recording this on Groundhog Day, and Punxsutawney Phil says we got 6 more weeks of this.
Yeah. If we're checking 6 weeks, we might have another year of winter. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right.
But anyway, we got a good subject to talk about that today, because no matter what's going on, we can kind of control with our own minds how we're looking at it.
Absolutely. We're talking about the power of perspective. And, we talk a lot on this podcast about continuing your education, reading, all sorts of things. And I tend to try to go to seminars whenever I can, because it's a great way to, keep up on things. Last year, just a little later than this, I had gone to Grant Cardone's 10X conference. For the last 3 days, I was lucky enough to be able to attend the Tony Robbins conference. And I don't think I have to introduce Tony Robbins to anybody on this podcast. I'm sure you're all familiar with his work. But one of the things he was talking about at this conference was that we all have a story. And it's a story that we've told ourselves about ourselves, of who we are. And in so many cases, that story is holding us back, because somewhere along the line, somebody told us we weren't good enough. Something went wrong, and we said, well, I'm just not that kind of a person. And we've created this image of ourselves that holds us back. And it's all because of the perspective that we have chosen. Not even that, happened, and there isn't even necessarily any truth to this, in fact. But we have this image of ourselves, of the type of person we are. what we can and can't do, what we will and won't do. And the only way to truly succeed beyond where we are is to change that story, change your perspective on who you are. Now, changing your perspective is not necessarily easy. We're sort of invested in this self image that we've created over the years. But when you really think about it, he does something called the Dickens method. And he created this from A Christmas Carol, where you think about something in your past, you think about your present, and you think about where this is going to lead in your future. And in your mind, you change what happened. So you change what happened in your past and change the story. You change the present. And of course, by changing your past and present, it automatically changes your future. And it's all a matter of looking at things from a different perspective. And, when I talk about perspective, I always go back to a scene from the movie Dead Poet Society, where Robin Williams plays a professor at this boarding school and he has all of his students stand on their desks and look at the room from a perspective that they've never seen before. So you need to change your perspective, sometimes literally,
Yeah,
by
absolutely.
looking at something from an angle you've never seen it from before.
Yep. And the bottom line is you're not alone. We've all gone through this whole thing. As you know, I teach the power of positivity, turning obstacles into opportunities. I talk about the kindness platform, and it all begins with a journey through life. And the very, very first slide that I put up there is your journey. I have 3 different sets of dots. Basically, it's your life from birth to where you are right now, the present moment. And basically, our journey starts with being born, where we are totally without issues and so on and so forth. We are just sheer perfection. And then what happens during our journey as we start growing up is influences. And this is the thing that gets all of us. Basically, it's what people think about us, it's this and that, whatever. And the source of all of that is our own insecurities because we were all born with perfection, but our human mind trying to figure things out started comparing and criticizing and so on and so forth automatically, developed our inferiority complexes, even though we were created perfect. And that's where all the problems come from. For just as what you're saying, go back and change what's going on in the back. But what that leads to is where you are right now. What is your mindset and your attitude? Number one, what are your virtues and beliefs? And most of those are based upon all this hearsay that you've been going through in your life. And then what's your personal plan, which we've talked about that too. Obviously, you have a plan for your finances, whatever, but for your whole life. And that leads to the only thing that we have, which is the present moment. And basically, I talk about the present moment being event plus response equals outcome, and positive or negative, that's what the outcome is going to be. So I connect the dots there and saying whatever your foundation is, whatever you are right now, whatever your mindset is, and so on and so forth, is going to fuel your perspective, which is basically how you look at things. Perspective, that's what it is. It's just how you view things. And that's going to fuel how you respond to life's events, positive or negative, which is going to determine the outcome. So if you can choose to develop and maintain a positive mindset by basically wiping out the past and reinventing it and so on and so forth, and realizing what reality really is, that's the big start to that. And so basically what you need to do, we talk about this all the time too, is just question everything. Question all your assumptions and ask yourself, is this really real? Practice empathy, starting with yourself and then with everybody else out there. And then shift yourself from just doing it to thinking about it and analyzing it and changing the story. That's really how you shift your perspective from negative to positive, realizing that all we are doing today is making you aware of that. And you're still going to have your down moments. But if you can use that and realize that you have a switch that you can turn on to get back to positivity, That's what's so, so important. If you take nothing else away today, that's what I hope you take away, is that we put it upon ourselves through no faults of our own. That's just the way life is, but we can change it too.
We can change it, but I'm actually going to push back on something you said, that it's no fault of our own, because there is a certain amount of accountability. Because a lot of times, what we've told ourselves over the years is an excuse. Well, why don't I have more money? Oh, well, rich people did something corrupt to get rich. I'm too good for that. Um, we've all heard, money is the root of all evil. Of course, that quote is actually incorrect, and it's love of money is the root of all evil, not the money itself.
That's
Oh,
perspective too.
yes, that's perspective too.
Yeah.
And we make excuses because we didn't do something, or maybe we tried and failed, but decided it's too hard, we're not going to try again. So there is a certain amount of accountability that we have to take for our perspective. We have the ability to change it. All we have to do is make that choice. And whose responsibility is it to make the choice? It's ours. It doesn't fall on anybody else. It's not a different group of people who, oh well, they took all the money, so they're evil, and I'm a good person because I'm poor. You know, this happens a lot with money, and in fact, there's a lot of this um in the book Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, where he talks about the perspective of money and how rich people view money as opposed to how poor people view money. And the difference is literally perspective. It is just framing it so that it fits your worldview. Well, guess what? If you have to change things to fit your worldview, maybe it's your worldview that needs to be changed.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Before I get to the life's journey, I talk about basically you yourself. The 4 Ps are purpose, passion, positivity, and a plan, and basically talking about you yourself. Number one, developing a positive mindset, which is your choice. Number two, giving unconditionally, which is also your choice, and that's a state of mind. Number three, just as you're saying, realizing the person in the mirror is 100% in charge of that person in the mirror. So everybody is an entrepreneur. And if we're an entrepreneur and we're blaming ourselves and so on and so forth, and other people, that's our choice to do that. And then finding your personal purpose, passion, and why is so, so important. So yes, we are our own worst enemies, because if we're keeping blaming and so on and so forth, when at any point in time we can revisit that and turn it around, that's exactly what we're talking about. So yeah, I'm not saying I'm going to wave a magic wand and it's never going to happen again. It's going to happen again. But if you
Oh, yeah.
realize that it's going to happen again, and it's your choice every single present moment to make a decision how you're going to treat that. And that's what your perspective is all about. And if you can change that to mostly positive perspective, that's the main thing. So it's so
Yes.
important just to know that, just awareness, reality. That's the way that things really are. So
Yes. There's an old Japanese saying, fix the problem, not the blame. But people are very quick to blame. Oh, this happened because of this. This happened because of that. And a lot of times, people will find anything to blame except their own decisions, with the possible exception of those folks that think the world revolves around them, so everything is their fault. You know, which is again perspective going 180 degrees. For there has to be a happy medium. You're not always to blame for something, but you are always responsible, because as you said, it goes back to E plus R equals O. Event plus response equals outcome. you have complete control over that response. You don't have control over the event necessarily, but you've got control over your response. And that is what creates the outcome. So, yes, you may not have caused the problem, but it is within your power to fix it.
Yeah, and there is that R between the event and the response, which is what gets us in trouble. A response is the action, what we do. It could be nothing, it could be doing something positive, it could be doing something negative. But after an event, we always have a reaction or a feeling, and we have 60,000 of those a day. And those, you can't help it. They're going to be positive, negative, they're going to be all over the place. And the key to put into practice is to pause between your reaction and your response. And oftentimes, basically just ask yourself, is it really worth my while to respond to this thing when you're feeling really, really uptight about it and upset? And if you take a deep breath and you do nothing about it, you've just avoided something big. And if you could put that into practice and maybe turn that around into a positive response, again, basically giving unconditionally, that's what it's all about. If you can basically meet other people in their place and realize that no matter what kind of inferiority complex you have, even if somebody else seems like the most confident person in the world, they have their own inferiority complex too.
Yeah.
I often talk about that empty courtroom where we're in the courtroom, we're the judge and we're the accused, but there's no jurors there because they're all in their own courtrooms too. And if you take a look at it that way, again, just put that in perspective. But believe you me, I have just as many problems as anybody else does, but I have that awareness. And life is all about awareness, and perspective is a big part about that. So,
Right. And you have to realize that you're making a choice. Even if you do nothing because you're trying to avoid a situation, not doing something is a choice. You are choosing not to engage. You are choosing not to respond. Now, that's not necessarily a good thing. If you have a serious issue that comes up that has to be dealt with, sticking your head in the sand is not going to help. It's actually going to increase your stress levels because the problem's not going to go away. You're just spending all of your energy trying not to think about it rather than engaging head on. It's the difference. I use this example a lot between the buffalo and the cow. On the plains, when a storm hits, cows run from the storm. So they are trying to outrun the storm, which of course they can't. So as a result, they actually spend more time in the storm because they're running in the same direction as the storm. So it takes longer for the storm to pass over them. Buffalo, on the other hand, will run into the storm. So they get through the storm a lot quicker because they're moving in the opposite direction of the storm. Avoidance is a choice. It's not necessarily the best choice. But again, you have to switch your perspective and understand that not doing something is still making a choice.
oh
And
yeah,
you've just expended the same amount of energy making that choice as you could have in making the choice to engage and fix the problem.
yep. I mean, basically, what I'm talking about, because again, I'm talking about the kindness platform. I'm talking about taking that pause between the event and the response, and basically, the pause is, do I need to do something right now or should I avoid unnecessary conflict?
Yes.
And this is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about not doing something because you don't want to do it and that kind of thing. I'm
Right.
talking avoiding unnecessary conflict, because the bottom line is that reaction is often disagreeing with somebody, whether it's right or wrong and so on and so forth. And if you could just avoid that by taking a pause and being silent about it now, maybe it'll come back later and so on and so forth. Biggest problems that we have in this world is because of split second responses
Yes.
that cause problems. And we can knock those down. If we just knocked it down by 10%, Think of what a better place this world would be. So what I'm talking about is avoiding unnecessary conflicts, saying to myself, is it worth it to respond to this? And if it's not important and it's going to avoid conflict, the answer is don't respond or respond with silence.
Yes, and that's a very important distinction to make. Taking a pause to think about your response is not the same as avoiding and making the choice to avoid responding altogether because you're sticking your head in the sand. Both of those are choices that you can make. Unfortunately, so many people decide, well, I don't want to engage, I don't want to deal with it, and the problem doesn't go away. When you're taking that pause, it's not enough to think of, well, what can I do right now that, that won't get me into more trouble, or that won't build on the problem. You actually have to take that time to go, what is the best possible response? How can I move forward and alleviate the problem? When you react, you don't do that. Reactions are automatic, they're emotional, there's no real thought. I actually had a situation not too long ago. End of the day, I said to my wife, I said, wow, I must have had a really bad day. She goes, why? I said, because I lost count of how many times I went, what the hell? It's, and that, because that is a reaction. And when something would go wrong on the computer, I would react. And when something would go wrong with something, I would react. And this, wasn't affecting anybody because I was alone in my office at the time, not actually doing anything that somebody else was going to see. But the reactions come. And you can't necessarily halt your reactions. You just have to understand that that knee jerk reaction is generally not what you want to be doing on a long term basis. Once you've got that quick reaction out of your system and you're not attacking somebody else or disagreeing with somebody, and it's just, okay, you got the swear out of your system. Now, how do you actually respond to the situation? So you do have reactions no matter how much you don't want to. But the difference between the reaction and the response is crucial. After I let out a swear because something went wrong with the computer, I looked at the problem and went, oh, okay, this is how we fix it. And I went about fixing the problem. So I didn't stop with the reaction. And that's an important shift because a lot of folks will react quickly and go, well, that's my gut reaction. I'm sticking with that. That's not necessarily the best thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, there are benefits. I actually did, even though I talk about this all the time, I went to AI and looked at a few different things and so on and so forth. And it comes up with the four key benefits and power of changing perspectives. Number one, and this is so true, this is a catalyst for growth. Adopting new viewpoints breaks your stuck thinking, transforming negative situations into opportunities for learning. It improves relationships. Obviously, if you become known as somebody who listens and understands people rather than somebody who always fights back, that's big time too. It enhances your resilience. If you reimage your failures, just as you're talking about, as learning experiences, and you improve because of that, that's so important. And it's obviously going to improve your and enhance your problem solving techniques too. I mean, it it's all good as far as taking a look at that. So it's so important to just look at the benefits of doing that.
Yes, and by changing your perspective, you change who you are. You can change your opinions. An informed mind never stops learning and changes their opinions based on the new information. I don't remember who it was. It was a poet that said, a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. You don't need to keep doing something or keep believing something just because you always have. We all have this incredible capacity for growth, but we actually have to make the decision to do so. Get out of your comfort zone, learn new things, and change your perspective. We always look back from a certain point of view. And the fact of the matter is, most of the time, what we remember isn't actually what happened. Ask any police officer. Eyewitness testimony is the least reliable thing there is because people always see things based on their own beliefs, based on their perspectives. There's a legend. I don't know if this is true or not, that in the early days of America, before it was a country, boats were coming to the continent, and the Native Americans could not see the boats because they had never imagined a vessel large enough to take them across the ocean. And their perspective did not allow them to see what was actually happening. Now, I don't know if there's any truth to this or if it's just a legend, but there is an actual scientific principle behind the story that your beliefs affect your perspective and your perception even more than that. And I had a situation going back a number of years where my perception was completely shaped by my beliefs. There was the doorbell rang. I opened the door, and there was a guy standing there with a pizza. Didn't recognize who it was. I just saw somebody standing there with a pizza and said, "We didn't order this." My kids came up behind me and started yelling because it was their uncle who had dropped by unexpectedly. He lived 2 states away. We didn't even know he was in the state. But because I did not expect to see him at the door, I did not recognize him at first. So, what you expect, what you believe, this changes your perceptions and your perspective. So, you really do have to think about things and go, is that really how things are? Or is that just what I've told myself?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, when I talk about your journey and who you are right now, who you are right now is your mindset and your attitude, your virtues and beliefs, and your personal plan. Plain and simple. And that fuels your perspective. It's as simple as that. So your virtues and beliefs are so, so important. And hopefully, if you can take a look at those and question that and say, is this really true or should I change this a little bit? Work on yourself, work on the person in the mirror. Start with a smile and say, okay, we're going to have a nice little session right now and we're going to work on this. It's a great thing to do. Wake up every morning, smile at yourself in the mirror. And I tell you this every day, give yourself a high five, saying today, wherever I go, whatever I'm doing, I'm going to be positive. Start out like that, even though you feel like a clown. Clowns are always happy. They don't get in trouble too much.
That's so true. So we are just about out of time. So, Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for our listeners this week?
Well, I'll actually use the AI quote as far as the power of changing perspectives. And it says, changing perspectives is a powerful cognitive tool that transforms challenges into opportunities, fosters empathy, and drives personal growth by actively choosing to view situations through a new lens. By shifting focus from negative to constructive, individuals can break cycles of stagnation, improve decision making, and reduce stress. So if you go on and just type in the power of changing perspectives, you might just get that quote that I just hit you with. And it's a really good place to start.
It really is. I think, speaking of quotes, I'm going to go back to one of my favorite quotes on perspective, which was Henry Ford. If you believe you can't or you believe you can, you're right.
Right.
It's all a matter of perspective. You're the only thing holding you back. So start it. See, I don't think it's enough to start the day with a smile. I think you've got to remind yourself, yes, I can. Because you know what? You can. Whatever it is, you can handle it, you can do it, and you can do more. All it takes is a little shift in your perspective so that you believe you can do it. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch every episode at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcast app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.